In just 3 weeks of January 1945, Hitler's elite IV SS Panzer Corps entered battle with 200 tanks. They emerged with fewer than 40. Entire companies vanished overnight in what survivors called a suicide mission to relieve a doomed Budapest garrison that would never be saved. Germany's last mobile armored reserves were systematically annihilated in 3 phases of futile attacks against prepared Soviet positions. Political obsession overruled military reality, and one of the Wehrmacht's most feared formations was transformed into a shattered remnant in the frozen fields of Hungary. The mathematics of the trap were brutal. By late December 1944, Budapest had become a death trap. Marshal Fyodor Tolbukhin's Third Ukrainian Front had encircled the city, trapping over 70,000 German and Hungarian troops, along with 300,000 civilians. The pocket measured roughly 4 miles long by 3 miles wide. Supplies were dwindling. The situation was hopeless. Every rational military assessment pointed to one solution: authorize a breakout while the garrison still had the strength to fight its way out. Hitler refused. Obsessed with denying the Soviets a political victory, he demanded the garrison hold at all costs. No retreat, no withdrawal. Instead, he ordered an impossible relief operation. The IV SS Panzer Corps would attack through prepared Soviet defenses to reach a garrison that was already dying. The force Hitler committed represented one of the Wehrmacht's few remaining offensive capabilities. The 3rd SS Panzer Division Totenkopf and the 5th SS Panzer Division Wiking arrived with a combined strength of roughly 200 tanks and 20,000 men. But this was not the elite force of 1943. These divisions had been bled white in previous campaigns, their replacements poorly trained, their equipment worn down by continuous operations. What awaited them was a layered defensive system Tolbukhin had spent weeks preparing. The Soviets deployed over 400 tanks and 600 artillery pieces. Engineers had constructed trenches, anti-tank ditches, and minefields in every village. Soviet intelligence had intercepted radio communications. They knew the Germans were coming, and they knew exactly where they would attack. General Hermann Balck, commander of Army Group South, assessed the situation with brutal honesty. The odds were impossible. SS Commander Herbert Otto Gila called it a suicide mission before operations even began, but orders were absolute. The IV SS Panzer Corps advanced into a killing ground. The operation, codenamed Conrad, would be attempted 3 times, each iteration launched with fewer tanks, exhausted men, and the same fatal tactics. Conrad there began on January 1, 1945. The Corps attacked from the northwest, aiming to re-establish a front along the Danube. Initial surprise gave way to concentrated Soviet resistance within hours. The Germans stalled near Bitske, and by January 6th, the operation was terminated. The pattern was established: German forces attacking predictable routes into prepared Soviet kill zones. Conrad II launched on January 7th toward the Budapest airport. The results were catastrophic. At Zamoly, German armor ran into a buzzsaw. Between January 7th and 9th, the attacking columns lost 57 out of 80 tanks in just 3 days. The fields became a tank cemetery. Vehicles froze in place, their crews dead or captured, while Soviet counterattacks hammered the stalled positions. By January 12th, Conrad II had failed. Conrad III was the final, most desperate phase. Launched on January 17th, it incorporated the battered remnants of the IV SS Corps and the 3 Panzer Corps. The objective expanded: destroy Soviet forces west of Budapest and create a corridor to the capital. German forces entered this phase with only 80 operational tanks, reduced from the initial 200. The attacks near Székesfehérvár saw entire companies cease to exist within 48 hours. Wiking's armored battalion was overrun in a failed night assault on January 21st. Most survivors were captured or killed. Only a handful escaped to report the destruction. The operation was finally called off on January 28th. The Soviet tactical advantage grew with each phase. A Soviet commander noted in his diary, "Their tanks came on in the same direction every day, and every day we destroyed more of them." The real horror lay in the cold arithmetic. In military terms, a division that loses 70% of its strength is combat ineffective. By that measure, the IV SS Panzer Corps died twice over in 3 weeks. By late January, fewer than 40 operational tanks remained across both divisions. Tiger tank strength was almost eliminated. Combined casualties exceeded 7,000 men. And these were not abstract numbers. They represented the destruction of specific units. The Zamoly tank cemetery and the failed night assaults near Székesfehérvár consumed men and machines at a rate that could not be sustained. A Totenkopf officer wrote, "We knew we were being sacrificed." He described advancing through snow-choked fields under shell fire, tanks freezing in place, and the hopelessness of watching entire companies disappear. By mid-January, the Soviets could replace their losses. The Germans could not. Every destroyed tank was irreplaceable. There is a difference between a military defeat and tactical suicide. Operation Conrad crossed that line. Poor reconnaissance led German armor blindly into ambushes. Infantry armor coordination was non-existent, leaving tanks exposed to Soviet hunter-killer teams. German commanders refused to adapt, attacking the same strong points day after day. Terrain and weather multiplied every failure. The Hungarian landscape was a nightmare of frozen mud and heavy snow. Vehicles became stationary targets for Soviet artillery. Men suffered severe frostbite in sub-zero temperatures. The terrain turned the region into a meat grinder. The annihilation of the IV SS Panzer Corps left Army Group South without effective reserves. It represented the final squandering of Germany's last mobile offensive capability. These forces could never be replaced. Operation Conrad was a politically driven gesture divorced from military reality. Hitler's refusal to authorize a breakout guaranteed the destruction of both the garrison and the relieving force. The Budapest garrison surrendered on February 13, 1945. The relief mission had failed completely. Operation Conrad answered the question of how quickly elite armored formations could be annihilated when political obsession overruled military logic. The answer was 3 weeks. The IV SS Panzer Corps did not just lose a battle in January 1945, it ceased to exist as an effective fighting force. With it died Germany's last hope of mobile armored resistance in the East. The mathematics were brutal, the tactics were suicidal, and the outcome was inevitable. In the frozen fields of Hungary, one of the Wehrmacht's most feared formations simply vanished. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe for more World War II historical deep dives every week. Thanks for watching.